What's the story that a person is going to have this problem, come to your piece of software app, and they're going to do these set of steps and then overcome that challenge?
What are the challenges that they're facing in the world before your app existed, and how is your app going to help them solve it? And just distilling it down to those few core parts, and then saying we can add all kinds of features after that, but let's just launch with those core parts and see if this works, if this is really a problem that's resonating with people.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, disruptors, and creators who are making things happen. My name is Michael T. Johnson, and I'm here with my co-host Tyler Kelly. And today we're at Venture Cafe St. Louis. If you're not familiar with Venture Cafe, and we tell you every single episode, it is the largest gathering of innovators, entrepreneurs, disruptors, people who are just making the world a better place in the entire world. So every Thursday around the globe, there are hundreds, thousands of people gathering in cities, and they're talking, they're making plans to do amazing things. And if you're near one of those cities, I suggest you go check it out. Today we have Ben Haefele and David Adkin. Thank you for being here, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So welcome, Ben and David. Ben is an experienced product leader with a passion for bringing the power of software to everyone, former VP of operations at Second Street, where he led product strategy, design, and development. And David has a master's in architecture, and through that process of learning about architecture, fell in love with design and joined a tech startup. And from there, started to develop your design skills like UX and product to marketing and branding. And those experiences kind of culminated in the realization that you want to just help others create things. And you want to help people just do stuff with software.
That's right.
Is that a great way of saying that?
That's it, exactly.
And so together you guys have founded, with another partner out in San Francisco, Foundry, which is the platform where anyone can create amazing apps.
Yep, yeah.
So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah.
So when I was reading through like what you're doing, I mean, I know it's still early and you're kind of, developing this as we speak, but it kind of sounds like you're developing a platform to build stuff without needing to code. So in essence, like, the robots will be coding for us. Does this sound correct?
Yes. That's correct. Hopefully, the robots, I guess, are you creating it by more dragging and dropping in the sort of predetermined components of an app. So it's something that we've been passionate about for a while, and that's been I think it all started when. I would make these fake mock-ups of software every single day. I would make them and create them, and they would look so real that I would present them to our entire company, and they would give feedback on it. And then unfortunately, you would hand it off to the developers and just kind of have to sit and wait for a while. And it felt like there was something missing there where I could make it look so real. Why couldn't I just quite take the final step to make it real? And that's what Foundry is kind of set out to accomplish.
So what about you? How did you end up in all this?
Well, so Dave and I were working together at our previous company, and on the product and design side of things, we were doing what Dave was describing during the day at work, and on the weekends, we'd always be coming up with new ideas for products, but ultimately we would just get frustrated because without the coding skills, there was nothing we could really do to build them unless, we were able to go out and raise a bunch of capital. And so that problem is always kind of stuck with us and bothered us. And so we said, let's solve this problem, because we're not the only people that are coming up with great ideas for new apps and new software. And we got really excited about the idea of unleashing more innovation in the world if we really brought down that barrier for people to be able to create stuff.
So instead of hiring a developer, you decided to start a company so that no one would have to hire a developer.
That's right. Some of it might have been we were just a little too lazy to spend the months to learn how to code, and so we're like, instead we're going to take this route.
We're going to invest years.
Yes, exactly.
In an app company.
Yeah.
So tell me what you've learned so far, in this journey to kind of start an app company.
Yeah, gosh, we've learned a lot so far. One of the things is we just in January launched an open beta, so we've started bringing on customers, and that was one of the smartest things we ever did, because before we were just building, we know, okay, is this easy for us to use? But once we opened up to customers, it became very clear what we needed to do to move our platform forward. But it's been also incredibly validating, because we've had a number of startups that are working with us that never would have been able to move forward with their business, and now they're working with us to build their apps on our platform. And one of the things we've learned is that not only are people interested in a platform that makes it easier to build the apps, but they're also interested in strategy advice as well. And so, we've got years of experience launching new features and new products. And so they're also looking to us to say, hey, what are the right features for me to launch my app? What's the best way to get started and kind of approach the market? And so that wasn't something we were really expecting, but it's been an exciting part of the business as we move forward.
Yeah, I mean, along the lines of what you're doing. So Tyler and I always have this discussion about kind of the human versus the AI or the robots. And
The robots,
yeah. And basically the idea of like, when's the point where kind of AI takes over everything and there's never a need for anybody to program or do anything. But at the same time, there's still things that humans need to do. Like a human can't create an interface that works. I'm sorry, I'm getting that backwards. Right now, AI or a robot, as far as I know, can't create like an amazing user interface that's intuitive to a human. And so that's where like a skill set like what you're talking about comes in really handy.
Yeah, exactly. Because, it's partially like, in order to do that, you have to understand that problem so well. So you need to be entrenched in whatever that exact niche problem is, in order to figure out what would be the best, flow for that user. So yeah, I definitely agree. We are creating a way for robots to do part of the activity, and then the human element of figuring out what problems to solve and how to go about solving that problem is what we're trying to unlock with Foundry.
Yeah, and we do often talk about that future where the robots have just taken all of the jobs, but we really do believe that software design and software creation will probably be the last job to go. And if we can make those jobs open to a wider set of people, then they'll be safer in the economy as it goes through this crazy change of all this machine learning and AI.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. We're here in Venture Cafe, where what's amazing about Venture Cafe is how people from all walks of life and different communities converge like in the space and kind of collide, and that's where ideas and innovation is fueled. Your app will allow people that don't have a background in coding and development to have access to these types of tools. So tell me about that part of the mission.
Yeah, I think it's really been fascinating, because at times people are like, do we really need more apps, or do we need more of that? And then sometimes we question, like, I don't know, do we, or like, will there be enough like things to make this happen? But then we keep finding more and more people who have been joining and working with us that are solving these really unique problems, or they're very, very like focused in some area that I was like, oh yeah, like that is like that's a really good problem, and a piece of software would really help actually solve that in a more efficient way. So it's been fascinating to discover these deeper and deeper problems. And I think right now with software and apps, it's very revenue focused, in a sense that because it costs so much money. The average app costs the first version of it costs between $30,000 and $170,000 to actually make. So you have to be revenue focused with what you're trying to solve, because you're never going to get a return on investment, right? Why would I ever make something that doesn't at least get me $30,000 or unless I'm just rich enough to be able to shell that out? So in order, for us to actually create something that you don't really have to make sure that it gets that much value potentially out of it, has been, a really kind of rewarding experience for us.
So tell me more about that, like the plan for how all that works. Like what's somebody's investment into that when they're creating whatever it is they're creating?
Yeah, so like David was saying, we definitely have some startups that, they could be the next big thing and they're going to revolutionize how the restaurant industry works or things like that. But we've also had a number of customers that are really focused on these very niche problems. And sometimes it's even specific to their business. So sometimes it would be a small business owner that's running a high-end gym that develops custom workouts for their clients. Before, that was all done over email and spreadsheets, but it's so much more efficient for him to use it through an app. We also have clients that are innovators within large enterprises, and they can't get their IT department to help them automate some process that, again, they're managing with some kind of spreadsheet. But they can build an app just for that specific problem and save them hours every week. Whereas, like David was saying, in the world before a platform like ours, you could never justify spending the development expense just to save those couple of hours every week.
So with the startups that you're working with now, is this kind of like the beta version, or is it you're full on into the market? And if so, like what types of let's say I want to create an app, like I go sign up, pay a monthly fee, a one-time fee, like how's all that work?
Sure. So it's a monthly fee, and then optionally, some of our customers have chosen to also pay us a consulting fee to kind of help them get started. And we are in a beta launch right now, so anybody can. It's an open beta. Anybody can come and sign up. But we have features that we've learned from our early customers that we're developing before we do kind of a bigger launch, which will happen in the first part of this summer. So we're adding things right now like support for notifications and payments and that kind of thing.
And then just add to the monthly subscription model. It's based on we have it tiered right now, so it's a little bit like as your app gets more complicated, or as you need more complicated things, or as specifically as you get more users actually using your app, then the price will go up. And what that allows then is, those first, if you're launching your first startup and your idea, you don't know whether it's going to be good or not yet. So spending a lot smaller of amount of money in order to actually create something that's real for you to really get in the hands of people. That's always been, get in the hands of people, get outside. And we try to create mock-ups to do that. And you show them and you're like, yeah, sure, I think I would want to use that. But actually being able to create something for a very cheap cost at the beginning that you can figure out, hey, is this really a problem that's worth solving that I should keep trying to tackle, or should I pivot a little bit and make it a little bit more about this? Allows those first, this first kind of beta group that our customers are working with to be a lot more successful, and kind of avoid some of the horror stories that we had heard from some of our friends that had this great app idea, and then they get a bunch of their friends together and they spend a ton of money, and then it doesn't work out, or they hardly even get it launched, and it's a little bit of like a horror story for them. And then they kind of put that problem aside when that problem could have been worth solving. They just didn't quite have the means to do it.
Yeah, and one of the things that is so exciting about a platform like this is it really makes iteration easy, because you can take this first version of this app and put it out in the hands of real customers, and if it doesn't work, maybe what you really need to do is take that feedback and iterate on it, and the next version will work. But now you're not out 60,000, you can't afford to possibly have a second version of your app. You can go in overnight and change it and put it out and see if you've got the right thing now.
So you guys both have a background in product design.
That's right.
Yep.
So let's kind of shift the gears and talk about just like product design in general, and kind of like this UX approach to designing stuff that works for people, right? What are some of the challenges that you see people make when developing, products, if it's their first time developing something for, the public? Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that...
Yeah, so I would say, if it's a first time person who doesn't have any experience, or maybe they have a little bit, we often see them trying to go out and it needs to do everything, or it needs to do maybe what they think are like the sexy features, like, oh, that's gonna be awesome. But us trying to figure out with them, what is the core problem that you're really trying to solve, and then as product and UX designers, we've been trained in and done it over and over again with the user journeys, and really trying to create what's the story that a person is going to have this problem, come to your piece of software app, and they're going to do these set of steps and then overcome that challenge, right? It's always a story of there's a beginning and they have an inciting incident, which is they have this problem, they go through, they use the product that you're giving them to overcome their problems. So you need to figure out what are the main steps on that journey to solving the real first problem, and then only putting in those features that really help them solve the problems along that journey, not the ones that you think would be cool. And often an example of this is that people will want to put a feature in that requires a ton of data, and what I mean by that is like user-generated data for it to be like really cool. Like a review system on a restaurant app, it's only going to be effective once you have so many people using it. So that is a really cool feature that might one day help somebody on their journey of, let's say, selecting a restaurant for whatever app they're trying to make. But at the beginning, that feature doesn't really make sense because it's not actually going to practically help them. So figuring out what are the core steps along your journey to helping you overcome the main challenge, and then making sure that the features that you do really can actually help somebody along that.
That's good insight, because a lot of startups start with an app. You guys have probably seen this, right? It's like, this is how we're going to prove that there's a market for whatever it is that we're trying to do. So like specifically for startups that are going to go to apps, what are some of the things they should be thinking of in terms of not getting too far out into the weeds and just doing getting an MVP out there?
Yeah, I think, like David said, we always, when we're working with founders, we always try to bring it back to what is the core story, and helping them think of their users and the problem they're trying to solve as a hero along the journey. And what is their object of desire that they're trying to get to at the end of the day, whether it's a great restaurant to eat at or an effective workout, and what are the challenges that they're facing in the world before your app existed, and how is your app going to help them solve it? And just distilling it down to those few core parts, and then saying we can add all kinds of features after that, but let's just launch with those core parts and see if this works, if this is really a problem that's resonating with people.
Sounds a lot like marketing. Just it's the other side of marketing, right?
Yeah. We have run into this a lot. We've had this passion for stories as being driving what actually should happen in product design, and it's often stories right now have been a little more of like a marketing buzzword that like after the fact you like tell this great story. But really trying to infuse that from the very beginning in the actual person who's creating it. And that naturally happens with the best innovators, is that they personally have a problem, an inciting incident in a story that resonates with them, and then they create a solution for that. So it often does start with some of the best innovators naturally that way, instead of maybe some of the other people who try to just like think of I'm just going to think of something that I want to do, and not naturally have a story that's driving that from the very beginning. So that's always been important for us, is how to infuse that from the very beginning into the products that you're creating, and then that will naturally drive the marketing efforts, because you designed your product around a story. So then naturally your marketing has a story for it, instead of what happens the other way around right now, which is try to come up with one after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, that's very common. Every strong brand has a good origin story, right?
Right.
And I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And trying to, infuse that into your product as much as possible, I think, helps.
So what are some other challenges that you see startups, your clients, facing, as they, let's say now they've launched their MVP and they begin, starting maybe to start selling? Like, how does the technology or the app change based on whatever level they are in the business, or does it?
I guess what I would say is that in some ways it doesn't, because what they could do is now they have the option to continue to build their app and build their next version, whereas in traditional models where you're working with the dev shop, you can't really do that, or if you do, it's a very painful process. And the incentives when you're working with the dev shop are such that they're really trying to build up the requirements as high as possible so they can charge you as much as possible. But that's only going to not only incur expenses for you, but it's going to push out your timeline and make you less inclined in the future to make changes when you get feedback from users. And instead, what we're seeing with successful startups is that they adopt a mantra of continuous improvement. And so they're making small incremental changes to their apps, weekly, and pushing out updates to the App Store so that they can continue to build traction and make their experience as hassle-free for their users as possible.
I had this thought in my head, like, we have so many apps out there right now. This is kind of a rabbit trail off that, but is there a litmus test for, like, do we really need an app for that?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we think about is what are the hassles that people are currently experiencing that your app is going to try to resolve. And a lot of them, sometimes it deals with expense, but the most common thing is how much time is this going to save someone? And if the answer is this is going to save someone, an hour a week or more, it's definitely worth making an app for that. If it's just like 10 minutes a day, maybe not.
I also think it's interesting, something that we've run into a lot with doing this now that I didn't quite realize until I really started talking to a ton of people about this, is that we're like really confused about the word app, in my opinion. Like the general public is versus like what the developers or more of like the tech industry like understands. And then it's like, what is the difference between an app and a website? And like things start to blend together. So some of the things that like I've kind of gleaned from this is like the traditional person thinks of an app as like just being inside of mainly an iPhone. And whereas development and more of the tech community understands apps to be really it's just any piece of software online that could help. So it doesn't necessarily, right, like web apps, it doesn't necessarily have to be an app on your phone. So part of like your question was, do we need that many apps? And people think like, oh my God, my screen's overloaded with apps, I don't need that many. Well, it's like, well, no, there's tons of apps online that like you do need that are very helpful. So then my brain starts going, well, what's the difference between an app and a website, right? Like, well, where is that boundary? So the best thing, at least I've come up with at the moment, is that a website is the same for everybody, and it's more just like a digital brochure. Whereas an app or software, however you want to define it, is specific to that individual user. So you can think of, on your Twitter feed, it's your Twitter feed versus Tyler's Twitter feed versus my Twitter feed. And I go in and I write something different on each one of those. Whereas when you go to the website, it's the same website for you versus for Tyler. So you can think of, I guess part of this is like trying to educate that apps aren't just on your phone and can be just little pieces of technology or software that, like Ben was saying, helps you overcome some hassle that you're dealing with. So in that sense, like I don't get as overwhelmed because I don't think of them as apps on my screen that's overwhelming me with different things, or I think I have to go and download from the App Store. And that's part of what we're creating at Foundry, is that when you make it one time, then it works for both iOS, Android, and web. That way, you don't need to make it for any of those. And then it can serve any kind of purpose, whether it's just solving something really simple and it's better just to have it in a browser, or whether it's a more startup that really needs kind of an iOS and Android component to it.
I think circling back to your question about what's a good litmus test, I was mentioning if it's not saving you a lot of time, then maybe it's not a good app. One pattern that we've seen over and over for something that does suggest there's a good app opportunity or software opportunity is if you've got somebody that's built like a real intense spreadsheet around something, that would be much, much better if it was an app solving that particular problem. It's just crazy the things we've seen people, use spreadsheets for. Like spreadsheets are great if you're managing like a financial statement or something, but if you're planning a trip or creating workouts for your clients or managing restaurant reviews, like an app is going to be so much easier to use and save you so much time and let you better interact with other people, because rarely are you working on whatever your spreadsheet is about in a vacuum with just yourself. You're working with other people and you've got data coming in and out, and an app makes all of that so much easier.
Yeah, because an app just presents, like the key, again, to go back to like the user experience, it just presents the information that you need to know at that specific time, whereas a spreadsheet just dumps everything, or there's sheets and sheets, it just kind of dumps everything at once. So it's hard to understand, how to change it. And, a great piece of software just gives you what you need to know at that given time so that you can make the decision, should I do this or this or this, and then move to the next stage. So it kind of breaks out all of that information into a more digestible way, be it over a lot of time, because you have to come back to the app, or just in that one experience.
That's good stuff. So you said you had an open beta.
We do.
Let's tell the audience how they can find you guys, sign up, reach out on social, the whole 9 yards.
Sure. So you can sign up on our website. It's foundryplatform.io. And you can find us on Twitter at foundryplatform.
And then you can sign up right now and get right in there and start creating things. So you can test it out to see what it's like. Obviously, you can't publish the app or really use it until you start paying for the monthly subscription. But it does at least allow you to get in there and see, like, could I actually create what I need to create? And then if you are more of a person that's like, I don't know anything about app design, like Ben said, we work with those people as well, and we'll call you and we'll figure out, hey, like, what problem are you trying to solve, and talk to us about what we kind of do a little assessment of like what features you might need, and then we can help you go through that entire process as well, especially while we're in this beta phase. We're really trying to work with customers as closely as possible to figure out what needs they have, and for us to learn the process even better.
That's awesome. Ben, David, thank you for being on the show, and best of luck to you guys.
Yeah, thanks
for having us.
Yeah. For more episodes, visit innovationcity.co. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're in St. Louis, visit us on a Thursday night. You can find details at vincafstl.org. You can also connect with us on social at We Are Slam or at Venture Cafe STL.
This is where it all begins, so say